Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's good to be back in another session with Blessed. And today I'll be showcasing something a bit different. We'll be showcasing how to create a DB, specifically the relational database, which could be MSQL, Postgres, or SQL in AWS. Then also I'll be able to show you how to set your applications to use such a database. The environment I'll be working with today is actually a Windows environment. This is not my regular Ubuntu system. I'm connected to through our DP to an instance hosted in Oracle Cloud. Hence, this is a VM in Oracle Cloud. So we have installed a couple of things. Just going to walk you through that. This is a Microsoft Visual Studio, the complete package. And you can see we've set it up to hook up with our AWS account, specifically the account you created for the user we want to be a developer user. So we can see this is a VS user over here. Now I have also set permissions to restrict what this user can do, but at a granular level, I've given this user admin privilege. I know there is a tussle between should we give developers admin privilege or should we not. Okay, from being someone who is a security person, I think this is fair enough as long as you have ways to manage that account and also to have visibility on what that account is actually being used for. So I do not want this person to always come back to me whenever they try to do stuff. So I've just created these accounts, IAM, then also assigned a policy, giving them an admin privilege, and also set some restrictions, as also set some ways to check whatever they will be doing in this environment. So as a developer, they have hooked up their, I've also helped them hook up their accounts to the VS, Microsoft VS environment. So you can see all the Amazon attributes that they have access to be able to operate on. Over here, we can see they've already got 3 S3 buckets in there. Then if I go over to identity, we should see there is just that VS user account, which is only what they are allowed to see. It just doesn't mean that's the only account there at the moment. Okay, so they've also got this application over here they're trying to build is a .NET application. So today I'm going to show how to create a database. Specifically, I'll be using the Amazon Relational Database RDS. Then I will show how to hook up that database to this application. Then we'll also view the page. Then maybe subsequently I'll show how to build the application on AWS environment. Since we have everything we need here, we do not have to go to the browser anymore. We'll be working with this AWS extension. You may be wondering how to add an account to this stuff. We can basically do that here. I can add more account with credentials, but I already had this account added. Then set the region specifically to the region that I want them to have access to. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this database. Yeah, so to create the database, we're going to, like I did say, I won't be using the S3, I'll be using the Amazon RDS over here. If I click this drop down, I can see I can also set security groups specifically, but currently it's default, as well as I can set subnets, but I'm not doing any of that today. I'm just going to right click on instance, launch this instance. So it should give me a couple of options to work with. We will wait for that to pretty much load, then we'll see the options and we can choose the one which we want to work with. So over here we can see a couple of these database types: Postgres, MySQL, Community Edition, Oracle. Depending on if we already have something, we have a specification we want this to work with as a database based on our company's policy, or so we can actually adopt that to. AWS is quite flexible to give us options to choose. So for today, I'm going to be working with the Microsoft SQL Server Express Edition. Then I'm going to click next on that. Now we'll have to set up a few stuff like credentials for the master user and also the master username, then also the location. Now I'm going to just quickly populate this thing, then we'll move on. Okay, so next we're going to if I click on this, I can see a couple of DB engine version. I think I'm going to stick to the recent one. Then also the instance class. Now this is where you want to be very careful. This is just a developer, so I wouldn't want to be curling charges. I'm just going to stick to T2 micro, which has got one visual CPU and also 1 gigs RAM. I think that's pretty much fine. The input and input output write speed or read speed is pretty much low, but I'm fine with that. So I'm going to upgrade mine, not change it automatically. We can also specify depending on the size we expect for database, but I'm okay with 20. Now the instance identifier, we can populate this based on what we want to populate this, but I'm building a URL redirector, so I'm just going to use that as well here as the identifier. Then the master name, admin, then I'll put a strong password. Then repeat it. Okay, that should be good to go. I'm going to click next on this. Then we will wait for the next phase. Okay, so currently we are going to do some network settings. We can already see it selects the VPC. Well, on this account specifically, it's stripped it down to only be able to access just this particular one. Now, subnet group, I'm going to leave this as default currently. Then publicly accessible, yes, but this obviously will only be accessible by this machine. So I'm going to add current IP, which will be this IP of this Oracle VM, Windows VM, to be able to access this. Then security group, for security group, I have the options to create new security group. I'm just going to work with the current one that is in there, which is this one. I think I'm pretty much fine with that. Now the ports, I'll leave the port as default 1433. Then I won't be setting any DB parameters for group and also other options. I think I'm pretty much okay with it. Where it is, I'll go to the next phase. So the final phase of this setup will be for backups and also system maintenance. I won't be touching anything here. I'll just stick to the backup and retain for 1 day. I'm obviously going to delete this thing once I'm done. Now this is pretty much okay since I know this user is a developer, but this you don't want to do in prod. You want to have a complete overview of what you're doing here if this happens to be something going in the prod environment. So I'm going to click next, which should give me a summary of every settings. Then I think if I'm okay with what I have, always ensure you review this again. You can go ahead and launch this, and we'll wait for that to populate. Okay, so right over here we can see the URL redirector which we've just created. Now to probably create a database on this, I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to create SQL database. Okay, it takes a while. We're going to wait for that to finish up before we can create a database. Okay, so the instance is available. Now we're going to create a database within the instance. I'm going to just click on create new database, and let's see, the username is admin. I think this is pretty much okay. The instance ID, we'll leave it the way it is. Then we'll put in our password. Then we'll put in the database name. The database name, we're just going to call it URL redirector. Okay, then click on OK. This should create a database within the instance for us. So right now our database is available, and we can see a little bit of details here with the credentials which we've created. So I'm going to just right click on this, copy address to clipboard. Then I'm going to go to my application. I will look for the app settings JSON file. We'll open that file. Then we'll have to update the default connection. We can see there's the, okay, great, the password, the user ID. We can leave the default username and password, or we can update it if we wish. I think that's pretty much okay for me. We may just need to have to change a few stuffs over there, right? Okay, so right here in the JSON file, we will change the data source to the server which we've just created. You can see I just pasted the clipboard in here. Then the username and password, we could probably change it or leave it the way it is. I think it's fine as long as we remember that. So leaving this, we will go to tool and probably build that engine which we want to use for this. Okay, so we're going to run the update database command. Basically using the package management console, which we probably grabbed from the NuGet package management. We'll open this up. then we'll just run the command update database. Okay, that will start the build and update the database, and if you see build succeed, it means we're good to go. So we'll go test this thing to see if it actually works or it's running. So to run the application, we can either run without debug or we just run using the IA Express. I'm going to run using this. Yeah, it's fine. I'm okay. So we're going to see what it looks like. I know. I know. It's going to throw all this stuff. I'm going to accept risk and just go ahead. I want to see my stuff. Okay, so we can see it's running. Now it's running on localhost, but the database is in the cloud. Obviously, we can see how unique that works out, being able to run this from a local and fetch the resource from the remote database. Okay, we will see if we end this here, we'll add a few more stuff to this. Okay, so we got this running locally. Then what? We can probably monitor a bit of the performance, process memory, CPU utilization, and events as well. But we can take it a step further by quickly publishing this maybe to a permanent environment. We can either publish this to AWS or push. I think I'm going to do Elastic Bean. I have a video on Elastic Bean, but not yet published. So I'm going to just select publish to Elastic Bean. We'll see how easy it is for us to host this straight up all the way from this without going to a browser or trying to do anything from a browser. Okay, so I can either use there's a new experience which they have, saves you all the abstraction, or we can go the old way. So I think I'm going to go the old way. I'm going to just VS user verifying the details, region specific, which is the not Virginia, and I'm pretty much okay with that. Then we'll create a new application environment, or if we have an environment that already been pre-built, you can redeploy this thing. So I'm just going to go next on this. Now be sure the name is what we want this to be. Okay, then the environment will be given with either dev, test, or prod. I think we'll just call this dev, still in dev phase. We'll check if this URL is available. It's not available, so we can add some random character to these. Maybe URL director dev, maybe just add my nickname in there. Okay, that's pretty much okay, and we're good to go. All right, so we're going to click next on this. Then here we have to set the kind of resources we need for this. So we can see the container type. I'm not sure this is Docker specific, but we can see several container types that we can choose here, either Amazon Linux or we can do Windows. I think we will go with Windows pretty much. I'm not sure at the moment. We'll see which one works first better. So right here on the network settings, we can either go simple or we can go detailed granular. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do here. We've got a couple of these container type. I think Amazon Linux is pretty much pre-built to run .NET Core, so we're fine with that. Now the instance type, this is where complexities or simplicity, as some will say, can come in. We can see we're currently using T3 medium. I'm going to work with T3 Nano because it's pretty much okay to do what I want to do, and also saving me that overhead. So we've got large, we've got something with 2 cores probably. Okay, we've got the micros here, but I don't think that will work fine for us. Maybe I'll look for the T2 small, T3 small, T3 Nano should be fine. Okay, 2 cores and then also 0.5. I'm pretty much okay. Now for key pairs, if we have a key pair, public, private key, this is where we can do all that configuration. So we can decrypt that key and use it to connect to the resource, either via RDP or whatever we want to do. But you need to have a pair of the keys, so you can do that. We can also use IAM to manage this. I'm not going to select single instance because if I do, it's only going to have one instance running. I want to have multiple, so like a load balancer thing happening over there. Now for the custom IAM, we can either set specific or we can leave this blank, but I think I'm going to leave it the way it is at the moment. Okay, so use non-default VPC. We can actually create VPC or single instance environment or enable rolling deployment. Rolling deployment gives you that opportunity to have multiples. In one fails, you roll to another one and saves you that headache. Now for load balancers, usually I think AWS has three. We have the network, we have the classic, and we have the application. So application is where we see the HTTP, HTTPS sitting right there. So we see the other options over there. We can select any of them, but I think we will stick to application load balancer. Then relational database access. Now this is where we need to select the database which we've just created, which is what is right here. So I'm just going to select this, and that should be good to go for me. All right, I'm going to click next on this. Then we should start assigning roles. Now by default, the Elastic BeanStalk will create that IAM role and assign permissions to the role so it can do what it wants to do, but we can as well be flexible with this if we want to maybe specifically change a few stuff. It gives us the privilege to do that as well, but we're not doing none of that for this particular video. So we go next. And once again, speaking about flexibility or complexities, we can see how we can pretty much make adjustments to suit our test or environment or even our organization's policy. So over here, project bit configuration, I think I'm pretty much fine with the debug any CPU in case any one of them has issues. Quickly going to debug that. The framework, I think the Netcore app 3.1 is pretty much fine for me. Then build self-contained deployment environment, we can actually do that if we want to do it, but we're not doing any of that. AWS X-ray are more like finding stuff, tracing issues, or probably fixing problems. Then also enhanced health check. I'm not going to do any of this stuff. Reverse proxy is pretty much necessary that you actually select the reverse proxy just in case something happens. You can easily connect back to that stuff. Then also for the health check URL, I'll leave it to the default home directory. Now we can point specific location if we want to where we want these checks to be run on. I'm just going to select next on this. Then we'll review all our selection. Then once this is done, we can deploy this stuff and wait for it to just do its stuff. We should have our applications deployed pretty much faster without going through the overhead of trying to set up the ECU instances or all the stuff. Okay, so this is how easy it is. We can see that our environment seems to be ready and it's running. Currently, we can see information more or less creating environment is starting all the way down to create a security group. It's still building. Now we can see the link or the URL. We can click on these to more or less probably visit the stuff or the application. Then also we can see a couple of other stuff which you can do here, probably to keep check, like monitoring, resources, looking at all that stuff. Now this is all in one pane of glass, which is what everybody craves for anyways. You don't want to have several resources, different areas, trying to manage all the stuff and the complexity that comes with it. All right here, we can see the complete environment for this application. We can monitor it, we can keep track, we can know if there's an issue or failure, we can quickly remediate stuff. Okay, I'm going to click on this link. Okay, I guess it's still building, so it's not ready yet. We're just going to wait for this stuff. Once it's done, we should have that stuff looking like what we find in the initial example. Okay, so we can see the status is changed to launching. We'll wait for this. Once it's launched, we can visit the application and see what it looks like. Okay, so I think our environment is ready. Environment is healthy. Now if we click on this link, we should see exactly what we now we can see this looks exactly what it looks like in the local when we're hosting locally in the database pointing. Then also we can see exactly the same thing happening here. Hence, this is okay, this is good to go. Now this is basic URL redirector, kind of like application. We can play around with this, maybe probably log in, register, or even do a bit of stuff, kind of like create some unique URL. Okay, I'm going to stop this here. And to close this up, we've been able to cover quite a lot. And I believe there is another part of this video which will come first. I'm going to talk about that briefly. All right, thanks for your time and see you soon again. Bye.